Today's video sponsored by ViewSonic, so more on that later, but little spoiler, I think you guys are gonna be stoked about today's giveaway. I can barely hold it, it's so massive. Oh yeah. Whew. We're gonna be shipping that out to one of you lucky winners. But let's talk about these two cameras for a second. The Canon M6 Mark II and the Sony a6600. I actually bought both of these in an attempt to find the perfect, super compact, everyday carry mirrorless camera. So this is the EOS R setup that I usually carry around pretty much every day now. It is just big enough to the point where people are always looking at it. They think it's a professional camera and kick you out of places that you're not supposed to be filming in. Let's cut to the overhead and just look at the difference we're working with here. So what I want to get to the bottom of is which one of these two is the better camera. Now I can tell you right now that I've made a full review on both of these cameras separately, and they're both awesome cameras, but there are some major differences between the two. Let's start with price real quick. Canon M6 Mark II, which is $849 for the body. The lens I have on here is the 11-22, which is a $399 lens. So combined for this camera right here is $1248. Now checking out the a6600, body comes in at $1198, so a bit more for the body, and the lens I have on here is the 10-18 f4, and that is an $898 lens, so quite a bit more for the lens, and combined it's going to be $2,096. So that's actually quite a difference there in pricing. Now the reason why I went with these lenses is because it seemed like the best ultra wide angle lenses available for each mount natively. And native lenses are nice because without adapters you're going to keep these lenses nice and small, and you're more likely to get better performance in the autofocus, which is also important. Let's start off by taking these two cameras out and recording some side-by-side footage with their out-of-the-box settings. I'm not going to tweak any of the color profiles or anything. I just want to see how these cameras look out of the box. Now before I tell you guys which camera is which, why don't you take a pick at which camera you think looks better. So have you decided which camera you like better? Camera A on the left or camera B on the right? Don't forget to hit that poll right there. Let me know what you guys think. I am very curious what the results are gonna be. For me personally, it's a close call here. I would say in some shots, the one on the left looked better. Some shots, the one on the right looked better. But overall, I would say camera A would be my preference, mostly for how much the colors tend to pop. It looks a little bit richer. So you ready for the grand reveal? The camera on the left, or camera A, is the Canon M6 Mark II. But I would have to say, from a technical standpoint, camera B on the right, which is obviously the Sony a6600, is the better camera in terms of sharpness and dynamic range. So let's start with sharpness here. They both look pretty nice, but if I do a 500% scale up to this little balcony here, you can actually count the number of railings that they have, opposed to the Canon M6 Mark II, where it kind of looks like a blur. You can't really tell how many individual posts there are. And then looking at the shot of the power lines, again, they both look pretty good, but once we punch in 1000%, on the Canon you can't really see what that yellow label says. You can kind of tell it starts with a V and then an O, and then it's just a blur. But on the Sony, it's pretty easy to read that it says voltage. So a lot more detail in the Sony. I'm not 100% sure if this is a softness in the lens thing or a sharpness in the camera thing, but we'll figure that out later. Now looking at this shot of my truck underneath this overpass, I'm looking at dynamic range here. Half of the shot is blown out highlights. It's direct sun on a sunny day. And the other half is underneath an overpass in the shadows. You can really start to see how much more detail there really is in the shadows of the Sony, while the Canon, it tends to kind of crush everything and the detail gets lost pretty quickly there. So I find that a lot of the shots I actually wanted to overexpose the Canon a little bit, and the Sony you can kind of keep it in the middle because it will capture what's in those shadows. So like I said, with the Sony you're getting more dynamic range and also a sharper image. It's just overall better. But Canon's definitely nailed the colors, and they have for a long time. I mean, just looking at this shot here, the sky looks nice and blue. It looks very true to me, opposed to the Sony, which seems to have a little bit of this hint of purple inside of the sky that I think kind of turns me off a little bit. On this shot here, we have it on the shady white balance on both cameras. And I want to say the Canon just tends to pop a little bit more, but of course it's going to do that. There's more contrast in the Canon's image. Here's a good example, the shot of the wheels. If you look inside the Sony, you can see much more detail inside that tire because the shadows don't get crushed as hard. Now here we have the white balance is set to sunny, and if you look at the very front of the car in the shadows, it goes to a blue, opposed to the Sony where I just see a hint of magenta kind of throughout the side of the car and also the front. So if you're looking at shadows, I always tend to prefer the bluer look. Now all that footage so far was 4K, but let's look at some HD footage for 120 frames per second. I think the biggest noticeable difference is how much darker the shadows on the Canon are on the default look. By the way, how many of you guys noticed that I'm editing on a brand new 38-inch ultra-wide display? This is the monitor that ViewSonic sent me, and they actually sent me another one, which was in that mystery box. It's going out to one of you guys. All you gotta do for a chance to win, drop a comment down below in the first 12 hours of this video going live, and one of you lucky guys will get this, and we could be monitor twinsies. Now, the specific one is the ViewSonic VP 3881, and they all come with a color calibration factory report. Because for people like me, color accuracy is one of the most important things you have in a monitor, and these all come with a delta E of less than 2. That is amazing. Delta E is basically how much variation a color could have, and you want that as low as possible. It's the worst trying to color grade on an inaccurate monitor because it may look great on here and then you render it out, watch it somewhere else, and you're like, why does it look so terrible? But also, we want good luminance and color uniformity. So not only are you guaranteed very accurate colors, but also very good consistency throughout the whole monitor. Love that. I was kind of torn between the curved screen or getting the traditional 16:9 4K display. Those technically have more pixels, but of course having this 38-inch has given me so much more real estate to work on. And this is my 5th project now editing on this monitor, and I love having this extra space. I don't know if I could go back. I'm definitely willing to trade those vertical pixels for how much space I get here for my color grading panel and my extended timeline, and it just looks cool. Come on, look at this curve. It's just, oh, I was a little concerned about, curved monitors because they do tend to catch a little bit more glare than a flat monitor, but I don't have any, bright windows or anything like that, so I've had no issues with that at all. So thanks again, ViewSonic, for sending this over, sponsoring this video, and also hooking us up with a giveaway unit. By the way, for those of you who don't know yet, that Tesla right there, it's ours. We picked it up the other day, and finally, we get it. We know why people are so crazy about Teslas. It literally feels like a car from the future, like it teleported into our time to save the planet or something like that. There's all of us trying to look super cool in front of a Tesla because, that's what you do when you have a Tesla, right? Oh, and there goes Sam again, as usual, making things uncomfortable. But it is a fun car for sure. It is wicked fast. All I can think about right now is going out to the driveway, getting in it, and driving it somewhere. Like, it's so much fun. Should we go do that real quick? And then we'll come back and we'll talk more about these cameras, I promise. All right, let's go. I really want to test out the autonomous driving feature on this thing. This might be awesome for stop and go traffic, especially in Los Angeles. There's so much of that. Okay, it's driving okay so far. Yeah, it's just doing it all on its own, and it's really doing a pretty good job of analyzing the environment and everything.
Hey, I love your videos, dude.
Hey, appreciate it.
Really love Potato Jet. Make sure you like and subscribe.
What's up, man? It's going into this turn fast. Oh man, I'm still freaked out, man. It kind of goes into turns pretty quick. The car can obviously handle it, but it's still scary. I'm like, ugh. But I think over time, we kind of learned to trust it, right? Okay, so it automatically turned on the left turn signal for me, and it's staying, whoa, oh snap. Okay, it's fine. I'm just scared. The car is driving fine. If I had more confidence, this would probably not be a problem, but I am spooked. Soon enough, it's gonna just be at the point where it's like you just turn on the car, put in an address, and it'll just do the rest for you. This is the future, guys. This is the future. Now let's take a closer look at the camera bodies themselves. Now they do both have a cage attached to it made by SmallRig, and I have that because both of these cameras have a flip up display opposed to a flip out. So if I try to see myself, I can't really see anything. But with these cages, you have the option to throw the mic on the side like that, or up top on the side where it's not in the way of the monitors. Now the Sony does have a much bigger grip right here, which is nice because it's easier to hold onto, but that houses the much larger battery, which is great news because that means better battery life. Actually, I've been really impressed with the battery life on the a6600, so that takes the win. Now both of these cameras have a mic jack here on the side, but the Sony has a headphone jack as well, so that might be a necessity depending on what kind of shooting you do. The M6 Mark II has the mic jack, but no headphone jack, so you cannot monitor what you're recording out of this camera. Now, one of the things I really like about the Sony is that it just feels very limitless. All the features that I want out of a video camera, it's in there. For example, when it comes to picture profile, you have all your typical gammas that you would see in these cameras. I often use HLG2. That gives me a decent dynamic range to work with while still being very easy to color grade. S-Log2 is also a very popular option for this camera. Just keep in mind that you will have a minimum ISO of 500 when in S-Log2, so you definitely want some ND filters if you're going to be shooting outside. And also, Sony's used to have this weird problem where if you put it into S-Log2, the autofocus will go to crap on the camera, but luckily on this a6600, they seem to have fixed that. S-Log2 autofocus seems to work flawless for me now. If you love shooting slow-mo, you can switch this to S&Q, immediately jump into 120 frames per second. So that's great. Much easier than diving deep into the menu, changing all these different settings to turn on 120p. So I definitely love having that feature right there. And also, when it comes to shooting video for exposure, I usually shoot in manual, but sometimes I've been shooting in auto when I'm vlogging and I don't want to worry about the exposure. But not just regular auto, I like to set it to shutter priority. So basically locks in your shutter speed, everything else automatic. And it works pretty well for those times where you really want to just forget that the camera is there. You just want to let it do its own thing, but you still want to maintain that 1/50th shutter speed. Now, Canon does also have this feature for photos under TV, standing for time value, or basically shutter priority. But as soon as you hit the record button, it automatically jumps to auto exposure. For movie recording options, we have auto exposure and manual exposure. That's it. There's no in between like time value or shutter priority, which is a bummer. I wish it was in here. I have tried shooting in auto exposure a little bit just to see what it does. I was not happy with the results. The shutter speed was way too high almost all the time, so I just basically turned it off and then just had to manually expose everything in every shot. Like I said, the Sony just feels like it has less limitations on the Canon. It generally does what I needed to, but there's a lot of times where I'm like, oh, it doesn't have that feature? Oh, it can't do that? I mean, right now it doesn't even have 24 frames per second. I switched this camera over to PAL mode to get it to shoot 25 frames per second. Now, 24 frames per second is supposed to be coming in a future firmware update. It's supposed to be coming real soon, so I want that to hurry up and get in this camera because that was a stupid decision to exclude 24 frames per second, but Canon's kind of reversed that train. But one positive about the Canon M6 is that it does have a pretty nice to navigate menu, and also everything is touchscreen. I'm still not 100% sure why Sony doesn't just make their menu a touchscreen. Now, both these cameras do have a micro HDMI out, which is cool. But the Sony, even if you output HDMI, this monitor back here still works, so you can still use it the same way you naturally would. Canon, on the other hand, you plug in an HDMI out, and then all of a sudden this screen in the back will shut off on you. Now, what's interesting is that I always thought of Canons as the cameras that do not overheat. Like the Canon EOS R is a tank, and then Sony's tend to overheat pretty frequently, which was terrible. But now it seems that they flip-flopped. Let's go take these over to the incubator and let me show you what I mean. So check it out. I got these cameras in the incubator at about 40 degrees Celsius or about 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Basically a really hot day, and that's the top of the recommended operating temperatures for general consumer cameras. And what's weird is that the Sony a6600 actually overheated first. Now I'm confused because all the other times I've had them recording for an extended period of time, the Canon always overheated first. Is the top shelf a little bit hotter than the bottom because heat rises? Ooh, I really don't know. But I'm sure it's not that much of a difference, right? Honestly, now I have no idea what's going on. The Canon is destroying. It's been in there for 40 minutes at this temperature. I have it on the top shelf now, and not even a temperature gauge popping up. But I've seen it overheat very easily before in the past. So was that just a fluke? I don't know. So I'd say the verdict is inconclusive. Sometimes the Sony overheats faster, sometimes the Canon overheats faster. I think we have to get more scientific to really get down to it. I have to probably take all the cameras and put it in there a dozen times and then get an average to really find out. I don't know. Should I make a whole video about that? I mean, I've got the time now. I'm stuck in this house for the next couple weeks, if not the next couple months. But yeah, sometimes they both like to overheat and sometimes they're both fine. We'll come back to this. Now let's talk about stabilization for a second. The Sony has IBIS, which is nice in theory. It's the better way to stabilize an image. The Canon, on the other hand, does it digitally. But looking at some walking footage, I actually think the Canon looks a tad better. The digital stabilization appears to just be a bit smoother. It just takes out more of the bumps from walking and all that. So I actually don't mind the digital stabilization that's on the M6. I would actually say Canon's the winner on this. Another advantage that the Canon has is the rolling shutter. Neither of them perfect, but the Canon seems to limit that more than the Sony. By the way, I should also mention that all these downtown shots were filmed before the whole lockdown situation happened. We are being very responsible, staying in, being super bored, and social distancing. But geez, I can't believe that this was just a few weeks ago. We were just walking around town like nothing was wrong. I mean, crazy times we're living in, right? You know, we should throw a huge party the day they say, all right, go outside, have fun, do whatever. But anyways, we've kind of gone over a lot about these cameras, so let's try to round it up. Let's start with the Canon M6 Mark II. I think the biggest advantage it has is the price point. This camera and lens combo is almost $850 less expensive than the Sony, so that is pretty significant. The colors also line up a little bit more in the way I like my images to look, and also I like the image stabilization a bit better. It just comes out a bit smoother. And of course, if you love doing whip pans, you're gonna get slightly less rolling shutter out of here. Now let's move on to the Sony. I'd say the biggest advantage of the Sony a6600 is the sharpness. Now the lenses do play a pretty big role in it. If you put a sharp lens on the Canon M6 Mark II, it does definitely get a whole lot sharper. But when we put the same exact lens on both the cameras, the Sony still has the sharpness advantage. You also get more of those video specific features like the different color profiles. This S and Q switch is nice. And of course, no record limit opposed to the 30-minute record limit on this camera. So every 30 minutes, this camera will cut. So you have to go back to the camera, hit record again. This, just let it roll. And they're both APS-C size sensors, but not all APS-C is the same. The sensor on the a6600 is a bit bigger. And as long as you're shooting 4K 24, you don't have to crop in at all. You crop in a little bit if you go to 30 frames per second, but it's still not a big deal. I did a little poll on Instagram. The Canon won by 54%. The Sony got 46% of the votes. That's actually a pretty close match. I wouldn't be too surprised if the Sony actually won on this YouTube video because people on YouTube are going to be watching it on a larger screen most likely. So maybe they're catching on to the sharpness difference there. I don't know. You guys can already go and check it. I can't. You are from the future. Even after making this whole review, I'm still torn at which camera to use as my everyday vlog setup. Help me out, guys. Which one do you think I should be using? What I kind of like about the Canon is the Canon look that I'm so used to and comfortable with. So I know that I can just hit record on it, edit it, upload it, and I'm done. But on the other hand, if I were to get a job from a client, I'd probably take the Sony a6600. I think I'll shoot it in log format and then spend some time color grading it. And I think if you put in some work into it and know what you're doing with color grading, you're gonna get better overall results after you put in the work with the Sony. This video getting crazy long. Let's wrap this up with some comments. Imagine the world burning down and this guy's just chilling, driving with one hand. Yeah, Avi, he's probably in the middle of this pandemic just chilling, sipping whiskey or something. man. A couple keys to real success in a creative realm is just time devotion. You just have to master your craft. You have to devote to it. You have to work hard every day from when you wake up to when you go to sleep to really carve out a space for yourself. That was a great quote by Avi. I definitely agree with him there. And yeah, one of the most valuable things you can have that's more important than a camera is your skill set. And really to build that, it just takes a lot of time and devotion. So I have a lot of time right now. I'm not going anywhere. Hey Jet, no shaking of hands. Okay, I filmed that video way back, okay? Sir, tell me about the Zhiyun Crane 3S gimbal. I am waiting for that to come in, actually. Can't wait to get my hands on it to test it out. Looking at the videos, they have some huge setups on that thing. Is it real? I don't know. We'll find out. Next couple weeks of filming videos, it's all gonna be filmed here in quarantine. So hopefully I don't get too claustrophobic. We'll see. But everyone stay safe out there and see you guys later.